Police, fire, medical.
Help! There's been an accident.
Where at?
We're at 213 and Malala Avenue.
Does it look like there are any injuries?
Yes, there's a lot of hurt people. Please hurry.
Okay, I need you to stay on the line with me. I need some more information. I already have help on the way.
Clackamas County Engine 16, Truck 15, Battalion 3, AMR 280, AMR 281, respond to a motor vehicle crash, Highway 213 and Malala Avenue. That's Engine 16, Truck 15, Battalion 3, AMR 280, AMR 281, responding with Clackamas County Sheriff's Office for an injury crash at Malala Avenue and Highway 213.
So there has been a serious crash. Normally, accidents like this, where there is alcohol involved, normally involves two vehicles. We're not sure why. But for this simulation, there's one vehicle seriously involved in a car accident, and the fire crews are usually first to arrive, and they're going to assess the scene and find out how many patients they have and begin to try and extricate these patients. They will begin to stabilize the vehicle so that it doesn't roll. They'll probably get under the hood here shortly and cut the lines to the battery cable in case there's airbags. They want to make it safe for themselves and continue the safety of the patients. But they will pop all four of those tires to keep the car from rolling. Generally, on a car crash like this, you have an engine company and a truck company. The truck company is the one with the big ladder on top. They've got a lot of heavy equipment in their rig to tear this car apart. The engine company does not carry the kind of tools that they're going to need to get into this car and take the top off of this car. And generally, if the patient is stuck inside the car with the dash on their lap, as in this case, they will take the roof off of this car and make it a convertible in order to get the patient out safely and keep their spinal area straight during this entire extrication. It appears that the passenger in this car is deceased. So they will cover the deceased patient and concentrate their efforts on the person that's alive in the driver's seat at this time. The paramedic firefighters communicating with the patient that is still alive, and if they're able to talk, they can find out what injuries they do have so that they make sure they don't hurt them any further. But they're just going to be telling them what they're doing. They're getting ready to take the windows out of this vehicle, and there's going to be some loud noises, so they want to keep that person very comfortable. They put a C-collar on the patient to keep their neck still, and we're really going to concentrate our efforts on keeping their their C-spine straight. Most, of course, paralyzing injuries happen with your spine, and so we want to really make sure that we keep that C-spine straight and keep that back straight. As you can see, everybody has a job on the scene here. This is we're probably actually shy maybe one more engine company here just to make sure everybody stays safe. So there's one person in charge of this whole event that's making sure that the firefighters remain safe at the same time. So now you're going to see some glass flying, and they're going to they've already sized up what parts they're going to cut first and how they're going to do that. They'll take out all the windows first, and then they'll begin to cut the pillars to take the roof off. At the same time, they're still treating the patient up front. If she has any life-threatening injuries that need to be taken care of, they will work on that at the same time that they're getting ready to take this car apart. We train for this type of incident very often, and it does happen very often. We probably respond to 80 to 90 car accidents a month. Serious car accidents like this probably happen 10 to 20 times a month. They're going to keep a firefighter in the back seat helping to hold the patient's head still and just to give comfort to that patient while they make a lot of noise here and start busting this car apart. Now, we don't always necessarily have to take the roof off of a car and cause all of this type of damage. This is more for simulation purposes, but if somebody is trapped inside, it does generally only take us 10 to 20 minutes to make this car a convertible and get somebody out safely and get them on the way to the hospital. This person will be taken out of the car, put on a backboard, and put in an ambulance and sent to the trauma center at OHSU, where they'll have a team of surgeons waiting to assess the patient from head to toe. And if the patient needs surgery, they will go directly into surgery. Now, I've heard some people comment that they're not moving very fast. We generally, it's like running by the pool. We do not run, we do not rush, because we want to keep ourselves safe and the patient safe. So everything they do is very methodical and thought out. As you can see, the firefighters are holding some very large hydraulic cutters, and then we'll also break out some smaller saws for cutting through the metal also. But all of these are very dangerous tools, so we want to make sure we stay safe so that we can continue to help the patient. We're in constant communication with the patient because obviously at this point they've been through a very traumatic incident, and now we're just adding to that trauma by causing a lot of noise, hearing a lot of bangs. So we're in constant communication with that patient to make sure they're comfortable and to let them know that they're safe. So here in just a minute, that roof will be off, and they can get that patient out. I think we're maybe just 10 minutes into this. That right there. As you can see, it just takes 6 little cuts, and you have a convertible Civic. So this, by taking the roof off and taking the doors off, it gives us a much bigger and better area to work in, especially to keep this patient safe. Because like I said, it's very important for us to keep their spine safe and in line. And we want to get them out basically, we're going to take them out like a log, so to speak. So now they have a lot of room to get that patient out safely to keep from doing any more harm. Now, many times on a head-on collision, the dashboard has been brought down onto the driver or the passenger's legs. And so after we take off the roof, then we would get working on pushing that dash up and off of the patient. So sometimes these extrications can take up to 45 minutes. But in this instance, luckily, this is a fairly straightforward incident. Well, and if the dashboard does impale, then we can treat the patient the best we can while they're in there. And as we pull it away, of course, we're running IV lines into that patient to keep their blood pressure up and to stop the bleeding if we can. Yeah, and generally, if they're hurt bad enough, we will have started IVs on this patient already, get some fluids going in, trying to keep blood pressure up if there's obvious internal bleeding going on. And we will do a lot during that extrication process to start this process of them healing and getting them into the hospital. Yeah, and oftentimes I just got a question about if they don't speak English. Well, that can be a tough part for us. We do have some people that speak different languages within the fire department, but you know, generally just that calming, soft voice and a little bit of hand language. And I think most of the time they recognize that we're there to help. So. So generally in an incident like this, for simulation purposes, we have a fatality in this car. Generally that person will stay inside that car till we're completely done and the investigation is over as to what happened. So sometimes that person may stay in that vehicle for several hours, especially if they're stuck inside there, until the investigation is over. I've gone on many calls where 4 hours after the incident we've been called in to extricate the dead body, and that certainly does happen. Generally a medical examiner or a funeral home will come in and take the dead person to the funeral home where the family can identify the body and begin the process of grieving and burial. Ironically, this Honda Civic that you see here today was just involved in an accident yesterday. For real. So they load the patient on a backboard, like I said, being very careful of that spine and their neck. Get that person in an ambulance, and they will be taken with lights and sirens as quickly as possible up to Oregon Health Sciences University or Emmanuel Hospital, where a trauma team will be waiting. They will do a complete head-to-toe on this patient and If they need to be in surgery, they will be in surgery within minutes. Now, if we know that there's something going on even before the ER, generally we have taken patients right into the surgery ward, and the doctors will go in there and do a quick assessment and open that patient up right away. So from the time an accident happens till the time a patient's in surgery, we like to have that be no longer than 60 minutes. Any more than 60 minutes and the mortality rate increases exponentially. So it goes up pretty quick. We got to get you into the hospital from the time of that crash into surgery within 60 minutes. So now the guys will just begin cleaning up while the funeral home arrives to collect the dead body. As we're picking up, if they need some assistance with that, we certainly do that. But we're going to clear our stuff out of the scene. So next, the investigators, normally the sheriff's department, will come along and begin their investigation. So the funeral home will start with their stretcher and the body bag, and they will start moving towards the car to find out what kind of shape the patient is in and make sure that they can get this person completely into a body bag. So like I said, normally we're not still on scene by the time the funeral home gets here, but occasionally we will, and we will help the funeral home get the body into a body bag, which will then be moved into the hearse and taken to the funeral home for the family to identify the body. So as you can see, they put the person in a body bag, zip it up, and they will take her away to the funeral home. So as I said before, this type of stuff happens quite often for us, of course, too often for us. So if there's one thing that we would all like everybody to take away from this today is, of course, we all know the old adage of not drinking and driving, but even yet, not getting into a car with somebody that's been drinking is also good advice. So I just want to thank the guys from Clackamas Fire for putting on this simulation, American Medical Response, Holman Hankins Funeral Home, and of course this is all brought to you by Oregon Impact. Thanks everybody for coming.
My mission is to help you guys understand the most beautiful gift we've all been given at birth, and that's the gift of choice, and how all choices can and do impact the lives of everyone around you. My choice is my voice, and I think you'll understand why when I finish today. On June 12, 1999, my husband John and I were attending a business conference in Ogden, Utah. That night, while we were driving back to our hotel that was 5 miles away from the conference center, we were rear-ended and broadsided. The crash involved 3 cars, 6 people, and was caused by one hit-and-run drunk driver. When we were broadsided, my head smashed against the passenger window and doorpost, breaking my skull into 24 pieces. My head resembled a ripe peach that had just been dropped. John looked over at his unresponsive wife with a shattered window, my head up against the shattered window, blood trickling out of my left ear, and my hands were just twitching on my lap. John was also seriously injured, both physically and emotionally by that time. The emergency personnel frantically worked the jaws of life, which you just witnessed, to remove my limp body. 2 ambulances came. They almost took us to 2 separate hospitals. The first great choice was made by my husband that night when he said, "Keep us together no matter what." The ambulance ride was $2,000. My emergency brain surgery lasted for hours as doctors tried to repair the damage my own skull had done to my brain. Parts of my skull had carved out chunks of brain matter, plus there was dozens of pieces of splintered skull sticking into my brain like a pin cushion. I was also bleeding underneath my brain into my brain, and it was blowing up like a balloon. So in essence, I was being attacked on both sides of my brain. I was minutes away from death, and the prognosis was not good. The doctors told my family that I may not survive the night, but if by chance I did, I would more than likely be a vegetable for the rest of my life. I was diagnosed with a severe traumatic brain injury. The only thing functioning was my brain stem, and that was minimal at best. My entire brain had been shifted in my skull. An injury as severe as mine has a 97% mortality rate, with the other 3% living in state care as vegetables. This wasn't my choice. Would it have been your choice? I didn't think so. Recently, the neurosurgeon who saved my life was interviewed for my biography that's being written, and when asked, "How do you explain Joan?" he said, "Medically, there is no explanation for Joan. You have to believe in God and angels." So it's a miracle I'm here, and it's for this reason, purposely, to help you understand the power of choice. The power of choice is indeed so powerful, and it can impact and will impact, like I had mentioned, everybody's life that you come in touch with, and there's more people than you even think, and there's more to come. I spent 4 days in a coma and 2 weeks in ICU. My family members were allowed to come into ICU to say their goodbyes to me. Would that be your choice? I didn't think so. Emergency brain surgery, 4 days in a coma, 2 weeks in ICU, $1.2 million. When I was physically able to take a chartered medical flight at $6,000 from Ogden to Portland, the doctors discharged me to the Rehabilitation Institute of Oregon up at Good Samaritan Hospital, otherwise known as Rio. Well, when I got to Rio, the staff asked me if I knew where I was at. And I said, yeah, sure. This is my high school, St. Mary's Academy. I graduated from this school in 1975. Well, when they tried to tell me where I really was and the reason I was there, I thought, What is up with these people trying to tell me that I'm in a hospital? I knew I was at St. Mary's. Nobody could convince me otherwise. My phone is ringing. You see, Rio is a red brick building and St. Mary's is a red brick building. That's the only thing those two had in common. But that's the only thing I put together. I figured I might as well keep going along playing their silly games, and it seemed like everybody that walked down the hall at St. Mary's Academy popped in my room at St. Mary's Academy and asked me my name, the year, my husband's name, all the same things over and over and over again. Just over and over. I thought, man, these people must really need their jobs if they got all these people at St. Mary's coming in to ask me the same things over and over. You see, everybody else was messed up. I was the only one that had something going on. Well, I spent the next 2 months relearning basic living skills like walking and talking. I had to learn to go to the bathroom. I had to learn to swallow again. I still struggle with that sometimes. Might not show it, but I do. I had learned to distinguish sensations like hot and cold and sweet and sour, things you take for granted, you know, that you know these things. Well, I learned hot one morning when I was reaching for a cup of coffee, and the message from my brain wasn't going to my hand to pick up the cup, to take it to my mouth and drink, and so I picked up the cup and just poured it on myself. Not a way to learn hot. The daily routines of therapies were absolutely exhausting, especially since I required about 18 hours a day of sleep, 18 hours a day, just to help my brain recover. So now I ask you guys this. We all have 24 hours in a day, right? Okay, would you choose to spend 18 hours of your day asleep because someone else chose to get behind the wheel after drinking? Choice. It's all about choice. Well, the staff at Rio wanted me to start learning how to do things again because I was going to be getting out in the real world, although I thought I was in the real world. So they came to me one morning and they said, Joan, we're going to teach you how to make toast. I thought, wow, these guys have really flipped out now. Have you made toast once or twice? Yeah, me too. No big deal, right? Yeah, you put the bread in the toaster, you push down the button, and in a couple minutes, toast. So they wheeled me into the test kitchen, and they said, okay, Joan, why don't you get the toaster over there and bring it over to the counter here. Guys, I had no idea what a toaster was. I had absolutely no idea. I recognized bread. I didn't know what it was called. I didn't know what you used it for. I had no idea this was the stuff that you put in that silver box, push that little button down, and wait for something to happen. They also had to help me put on my socks and shoes. As a result of my, the piece of my skull had permanently damaged my optic nerve in my right eye. I was looking out and up. And so I had double vision, sometimes triple and sometimes quadruple, depending on which way I turned my head. So where I had 2 feet, now all of a sudden I had 4. So they'd have to show me, I'd have to figure out which were the real 2 feet and which were the ones caused by the double vision in order to get my socks and shoes on. If they would have just told me which were the real ones and which were the ghosting ones, it would have been so much easier. But oh no, part of their little game for me at St. Mary's was for me to figure it out on my own. Well, I spent nearly 2 months at St. Mary's Academy. Well, St. Mary's at $60,000, actually 4 years and 2 months, but 2 months of rehab at St. Mary's. And when John came to pick me up, my husband John came to pick me up to bring me home, I thought we were at my sister Rita's house. I said, why are we at Rita's? He said, no, this is our house. I thought, oh my God, they sold him some bill of goods too. He's in on this scheme. I didn't even recognize our own dog, Wiley. How many of you guys have dogs out there? So you know they're pretty excited when you're gone for the day, you're at work or school or whatever. You come home, they're pretty glad to see you, right? Well, Mama's been gone 2 months. I come walking up the walk and out bolts out the front door this beautiful dog that's just jumping around, jumping. I thought, oh my gosh, they threw a manic dog in the mix. What is wrong with these people? Everybody was stacked against me. Well, I knew I had some real problems when I couldn't remember my husband's name. I said, I know I married you, but I can't remember your name. Do you think that was his choice? Would that be your choice because of the choice that was made by someone to drive distracted or impaired? Now your family members can't remember your name? Choice. Well, that might have been a low point in the relationship, but John's my knight in shining armor, and he has been by my side through all of this. He takes his marriage vows very, very seriously. You've been to weddings before, you hear the for better, for worse, right? Yeah, well, they're not words. They are indeed vows, and this was not the for better. This was so much more the for worse. He was being tested big time then, as he is every single day. I really hope that brain injury hasn't touched your life in any way, shape, or form, and I hope it never does, because brain injury is a very, very sneaky, a huge injury, and it manifests its way in so many different ways. It manifests its head in so many different ways. Every day there'll be a challenge I'll be up against. I don't know how big, I don't know where, I don't know what, but yet it's going to hit me, and it's in that moment that I have to decide how to deal with it. So when John comes home from work, he doesn't know what I've been up against. He doesn't know how I've handled it. He doesn't know the mood I'll be in or if I'll even be awake. Because I needed 24-hour care when I came home from the hospital, he took 6 months off work without pay. That's a little expense there. To make sure my medical needs and make sure that I was taking all my meds on time. And that wasn't his choice. You see, these meds, I had a whole bunch of different ones that had to be taken a certain dosage at a certain time, and I could never remember how to do that. My second surgery was a cranioplasty, and that's where they put a plate in my head to protect my brain. But before you go any further in your thought process, if we're in the airport together, you're not going to hear me coming through security. My head's not going to go woo, 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 and set off the alarm. It's not made of metal. It's bone from a cadaver. Someone else's choice to donate their body to science is protecting my brain, where somebody else's choice to get behind the wheel after drinking almost killed me. That procedure was $17,000. My optic nerve is also permanently damaged, like I had mentioned, in my major eye muscle, so I had to go up to Seattle to get a Botox injection in my eye. And so John and I took a train up to Seattle, and the doctor was explaining the procedure. After 15 years in optics, I should have known what he was talking about, but I didn't. And I did understand. Joan, why don't you sit down and put a drop in your eye and numb your eye? So I sat down, put a drop in my eye. The next thing I see is a doctor with a needle, at least that big, and he's coming at me. I see the needle coming into my eye. I feel the fluid being released in the back of my eye. I see and feel the pressure of that needle coming out of my eye. Now, do you think that was my choice? Would that be your choice, the way to spend a Saturday and $600? Next was my eye surgery, and that would involve cutting the two major muscles, and moving my eye back to its original place, and then reattaching the muscles. That involved more anesthetic, more downtime, and $13,000. The ongoing and everyday losses include my short-term memory. Sometimes that's hour to hour. Sometimes that's day to day. Sometimes even minute to minute. That's why I need notes. Even though this has been 12 years, I've been presenting, doing this, almost 12 years. I also have problems with fatigue, depth perception, and visual problems that force me to clench my jaw when I concentrate. And because of that, my teeth are cracking. I was eating some granola the other day, and my molar broke in half. Emergency dental work. So the total dollar amount that John and I were responsible for was $1,300,000. I tell you that when you think about if in fact you want to go out and go partying with your friends, $1,300,000. You guys have that kind of money? Or do you have insurance for that? It's just not worth it. You know, because of the choices that were made by the drunk driver, all my choices were made for me. So do you want to be part of the problem or part of the solution? That's a choice, and that can only be made by you. I wish you guys a safe summer. It's all about choice. It is all about choice from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to bed. Make good choices. They impact lives. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name's Ron Hansen. How many of you know somebody who's driven under the influence? How many of you have been in a car with somebody who's driven under the influence? That's one of the reasons we're here today. I'm going to share a little bit about my story. It goes back to January 23rd, 1988. It was a Saturday. I was working in Canby at the time. I got off work at noon, stopped off at my mother's house to see how she was doing. My plan was to head home to Gladstone, where I was living at the time, rent a couple videos, and get ready to go to court on Monday the 25th to try to get custody of my then about 14-month-old son. Anybody familiar with the Canby area? I see a Canby sweatshirt over there. Well, as you're leaving Canby going down 99E on the right-hand side where there's a Fred Meyer's, back in 1988 that Fred Meyer's wasn't there, but there was a tavern called the Rip City Pub in that area. I looked into the parking lot of that tavern. I saw the cars and pickups of people that I worked with, and I thought, I'm stressed about going to court. I'm going to stop in and have 2 beers. Now, when I walked into the tavern, the people that I worked with, they were sitting at a table, but the table was full. But it was right next to the bar, so I sat up on a bar stool and I ordered myself a small pitcher. I think some of you realize that's a little more than the 2-beer limit I put on myself. Well, after that small pitcher was gone, someone bought a round and another small pitcher was put in front of me. I thought peer pressure only affected people grade school, high school. I was 34 years old at the time, liked the people I worked with. I was starting to feel relaxed, starting to have a little bit of fun. And I drank that small pitcher. Then I drank another small pitcher and another. And the last thing I remember from the tavern was I racked the balls on the pool table and was waiting for somebody to break to start a game of pool. The next thing I remember was I was in a manual hospital. I can't tell you what day it was, but I remember seeing the faces of 2 people. I knew who they were, but I couldn't tell you their names. It was my mother and my sister. That time my mother had told me I had been involved in a car crash and that 3 people had died. I ended up going through the windshield of a little pickup and was told by doctors first that I was lucky to be alive, and second that I was lucky that I could remember anything about that day. Well, on April 4th, I was arrested and charged with 3 counts of first-degree manslaughter and taken to the Clackamas County Jail. While I was waiting trial and sentencing, the attorney was telling me I ended up doing a plea bargain and my sentence was 60 years with a 9-year minimum. Today, if I was to commit that same crime, it would be a measure 11, and it would have been 30 years. You'd do the full 30 years. Well, there was a number of definitions about first-degree manslaughter, but the one that I remember was that it said that it was the wanton disregard for the value of human life. And my first thought was that definition, it doesn't describe who I am. I told myself, I have a young son I was trying to get custody of. I stopped off to see how my mother was doing that day. I had friends and family members that I cared about. And it was hard for me to grasp onto that, the wanton disregard for the value of human life. I was sentenced on August 16th, and on August 23rd I was taken to the Oregon State Penitentiary and given a lot of time to think about what I had done and what had brought me there. That was not my first DUI. I had been involved in a diversion program about, I'm thinking, 8 years prior to that. And I started to think, that as far as what had brought me there, I thought that, cops were picking on me when they pulled me over before. I don't know if anybody's ever gotten a minor possession or police involvement, but my thought was they're just picking on me. And then I started to think, here I am, I'm putting this chemical in my body called alcohol that's going to affect me. I don't know if any of you watched people doing the goggle thing earlier, where they were walking. There was one guy who was trying to dribble a basketball and couldn't. And here I am thinking that alcohol is not going to affect me. It affects how you act, how you feel, and how you react to things. How many of you have ever drank and you did it because you like the taste of alcohol? What I've got to tell people who raise their hand, if you drink more than one, that's a lie, because I love the taste of milk, but I never would have drank 5 small pitchers of milk, one right after the other. You drink for how it affects you, how it makes you feel. When I hear people laughing, I remember back when I was watching the people on the goggles. Their friends were laughing at them. They were laughing because that's where it takes your mind, even though you're not under the influence. I thought I was actually a safer driver when I got behind the wheel. Well, this safe driver went around a curve at 70 miles an hour just as you hit the Kanema district before Oregon City and ran head-on into a car carrying Scott, his wife Trudy, and 2 daughters, Amy and Jessica. Scott, the driver, lived. His wife and 2 daughters died. I got out of prison 8 years later, and I was riding in the passenger seat of my brother-in-law's car. And my sister and mother were in the back. We're driving down 99E. All of a sudden, these cars start coming towards us, and it scared the crap out of me. I thought they're going to hit us. They're going to kill us. And then I started to think, remember, doctors told me I would have no memory of the crash. I don't know if I said that, but they told me that. And I started to think more about the impact on Scott, the driver. Has anybody listened to a group named Pearl Jam ever? They did a remake of an old 60s song about 13, 14 years ago called Last Kiss. And when I watch those crashed reenactments, I think of what Scott might have been going through. I didn't know a whole lot about his injuries. I know he had a broken leg, a punctured lung, some broken ribs, and probably had to be cut out of that car. And I tried to imagine what it would be like for him to be sitting there in that car next to his dead wife, Trudy, and whether he was able to hold her or help her in any way, and what type of sounds he might have heard. And then I tried to imagine what it would be like to watch your other daughter being placed maybe in a body bag and not being able to go to her. And then, this isn't meant to be a God thing, but if you see a life flight helicopter coming and your other daughter's being put into it, you start praying to something, whether you believe in it or not, that she's going to make it, that she's going to survive. And then what would it be like to find out she didn't make it to OHSU? She died in that hospital. I can't imagine the scars I left him. Well, around Easter of the year 2000, I met a fireman who was one of the first responders, and he told me he could answer some of my questions about Scott. But first he wanted to tell me how that impacted him. When you see those firemen working, cutting those people out, it impacts them. He said he was handed an 8-month-old child and asked to perform CPR, and how that affected him because he had 2 children about the same age at that time. And that time he told me that Scott was in a coma upon impact and had no memory of the crash. So those old tapes keep going through and through my head, but now there's some new tapes of what would it be like to wake up some morning and reach over in bed next to me, and my wife, she's gone. And I go to the back bedroom and my son, he's gone. And then I try to think, what would it be like to wake up some morning and realize everything that you loved and cared about had just been taken from you and you don't know? I can't imagine what that would be like either. How many of you have real vivid memories of the age of 2? Vivid memories of the age of 2. I'm seeing one person. That pretty much with all the other people who didn't, that reinforces my thoughts about Scott and Trudy's other son, Timmy, who was not in the car. They were coming home from having dinner at Grandma and Grandma's, so he wasn't in the car. He's got to spend the night. So I basically robbed him of ever knowing what it was like to ever be held and loved by his mother or interact with an older or younger sister. I can't imagine the pain I caused him. My hope is that none of you will drink and drive. My other hope is that you won't get in the car with somebody who's under the influence, and that you'll be proactive. If you see somebody getting in the car, try to take their keys, offer them a place to stay, call a family member or a friend for them, get somebody to give them a ride, don't let them drive, and if they still want to get behind the wheel, call the police. I would have much rather spent a night in the drunk tank than be sitting here today talking to you about this. Please, as Joan said, have a good summer, have a safe summer, and please plan ahead. Once you start drinking, your planner goes out the window. Thank you.